So, okay, let's just set the scene. You have 5 Navy bombers, 14 experienced airmen.
Right.
Then a rescue plane with a crew of 13 gets sent out to find them.
This all happens in a single afternoon.
Exactly. They all launch on this, crisp December afternoon, and by that evening, 27 men and 6 aircraft have just vanished.
No bodies.
No wreckage, just gone.
It sounds like the tagline for a blockbuster sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
It really does.
But this is the cold, hard reality of December 5th, 1945. And this is the incident that didn't just rattle the U.S. Navy. It birthed a modern mythology.
We are talking about Flight 19. And if you've ever gone down a late-night internet rabbit hole about the Bermuda Triangle, this is the Big Bang.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the event that essentially put the triangle on the map decades before it even had that catchy name.
It is the foundational legend. But what's so fascinating here is that, unlike a lot of folklore where the details are fuzzy, for Flight 19, we have a massive paper trail.
A huge one.
We have radio logs, investigation reports, weather charts, even witness testimonies.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We've got a huge stack of source materials here. Narrative accounts, transcripts, the official Navy inquiry. And we're going to peel back those layers of pop culture to get to the military reality.
Right.
We want to understand not just what happened, but maybe why it happened.
And to do that, you have to look at the psychology of being lost. Because when you strip away the aliens and the time warps, you are left with something that's arguably more terrifying.
Which is?
Human confusion, mechanical betrayal, and just the unforgiving nature of the open ocean.
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start by maybe destroying a common misconception. I think a lot of people imagine this happening on like a dark, stormy night.
Yeah, lightning crashing, all of that.
But looking at the weather reports for December 5th, 1945, that wasn't the case at all, was it?
Not at the start, no. It was a standard Wednesday afternoon at the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station. World War II had just ended a few months before.
So the mood was probably pretty good.
Generally optimistic, yeah. People were looking forward to Christmas. The weather was described as favorable, scattered clouds, decent visibility, nothing to worry about.
And the flight itself, Flight 19, it was designated navigation problem number 1. That sounds incredibly routine.
It was a milk run.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the mission was simple. Take off, fly east to the Hens and Chicken Shoals to drop some practice torpedoes, continue east, turn north, and then turn southwest back to base.
A triangular route, ironically enough.
Yeah.
Ironically. So let's look at the hardware. These weren't rickety biplanes. They were flying TBM Avenger torpedo bombers.
And the Avenger is a beast. It was the heaviest single-engine plane of the war. We were talking about a flying tank, basically. Rugged. Very rugged, reliable, designed to take a beating. It carries a pilot, a turret gunner, and a radio man.
And on this day, we have 5 of them, 14 men in total. Now, the sources really emphasize that these weren't, green recruits.
And that's a crucial distinction. Most of these guys were veterans. They had flown in the Pacific. They knew how to handle these aircraft in combat. They weren't easily spooked.
Leading the flight is Lieutenant Charles Taylor. I'm looking at his service record here, and it's, wow, over 2,500 flight hours. A combat veteran.
Right. This wasn't a guy who should easily get rattled.
No.
However, the sources do point out a specific nuance about his experience that becomes, critical later.
What's that?
He was new to Fort Lauderdale. He'd just transferred from Miami. So while he was an expert pilot, he wasn't as familiar with the specific landmarks of this local area as some of the students he was leading.
Okay, that is an important breadcrumb for later. So 2:00 p.m., wheels up, the squadron takes off, weather's good, they reach the shoals, drop their practice bombs, everything is textbook.
Until the turn. The flight plan called for them to head further east, then turn north. But around 3:45 p.m., the control tower in Fort Lauderdale gets a transmission that just changes everything.
It's Taylor, and he doesn't sound like a flight leader wrapping up a drill. He says, I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn.
And that's where the nightmare begins. The tower asks for his position, and Taylor replies with a sentence that every single pilot dreads.
What does he say?
Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hold on. Both compasses.
Yeah.
You need to clarify this. These planes had a magnetic compass and a gyroscopic compass, right?
Correct. They work on totally different principles.
Yeah.
The odds of both of them failing at the same time due to a mechanical issue they're astronomically low.
It just doesn't happen.
It just doesn't happen.
See, this is the detail that really sends shivers down people's spines. If both fail, you have no north. You are flying blind.
Completely. And you have to remember, in 1945, There's no GPS. There's no digital map on an iPad. They're navigating by what's called dead reckoning.
So you calculate your position based on speed, time, and direction.
Exactly. And if you lose the direction variable, the whole equation just collapses. You're just a dot in a void.
So Taylor is looking at the water, looking at the islands below, trying to match them to a mental map. And here's where that new to the area factor kicks in. Taylor reports that he thinks he is over the Florida Keys.
This is the critical error. This is what we might call confirmation bias under stress. He looks down, sees islands, sees water. His brain tells him, I must be over the Keys, in the Gulf of Mexico.
But the flight data suggests they were actually where?
Almost certainly over the Bahamas. They'd been flying east for over an hour. They were likely over the Abaco Islands.
Okay, let's visualize the geography here because this is deadly. If you're over the Florida Keys and you want to go home to Fort Lauderdale, you fly north.
Right. The Florida mainland is directly north of the Keys.
But if you are actually over the Bahamas, which is east of Florida, and you fly north,
You are flying parallel to the U.S. coast, heading straight into the open, empty Atlantic Ocean.
you misland entirely.
You're gone. And that is terrifying. It's a mirror image trap. The more Taylor tried to fix the problem based on his wrong assumption, the deeper he led them into disaster.
And we can see from the transcripts that he was stubborn about it.
Well, he was the ranking officer. There's a moment in the logs where the other pilots, the students, are chatting on a secondary frequency. One of them says, damn it, if we would just fly west, we would get home.
So the students knew? They recognized the Bahamas.
It seems so. They probably recognized the landmarks better than Taylor because they'd been training there longer. But, naval discipline is rigid.
You follow the flight leader.
You follow the leader, even when the leader is spiraling into confusion.
So they follow him north, and then east, and then west. They start zigzagging, and all this time they're just burning fuel.
And the sun is starting to set. December days are short. By 4:3 or 5:00 p.m., the light is fading, and the weather, which was nice at 2 o'clock, starts to turn. A cold front is moving in. The seas are getting rougher.
This leads us to those really eerie transmissions. The signal is fading in and out, and Taylor says something that has fueled the supernatural theories for decades.
What does he say?
We can't find west. Everything is wrong. We can't be sure of any direction. Everything looks strange, even the ocean.
Even the ocean. Wow. That phrase sticks with you, doesn't it?
It really does. What could that possibly mean? Water is water. How can it look strange?
Well, there are two ways to read this. The skeptic says the weather was churning the water, the lighting was weird because of storm clouds, and Taylor was on the verge of a panic attack.
Right.
When you're in that high-stress fight-or-flight mode, your perception can actually warp.
The break-off phenomenon.
Something like that, yeah. A sense of detachment where the world doesn't look quite real anymore. Colors seem off, distances distort.
But the enthusiasts, the people who believe in the triangle, they latch onto this. They suggest the water looked different because they'd entered some kind of anomaly.
Exactly. Maybe it was glowing, or maybe it was perfectly calm when it should have been rough. If you believe they flew into a dimensional rift, then the ocean looks strange. It's a literal observation.
It creates this visceral image of them entering another dimension, like the physics of the world just stopped working.
And if you're a believer in those theories, that quote is your smoking gun. But if you look at it through the lens of a pilot suffering from vertigo and mechanical failure, it's a cry of absolute desperation.
So twilight hits. They are low on fuel. The radio calls become fragmented. And the last chilling message from Taylor is basically an order to the squadron.
What's it?
When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together.
It's a tragic pact. He knew they couldn't ditch individually in the dark. They had to try and go down in formation to have any chance of finding each other. And that's the last anyone hears of Flight 19.
But the tragedy isn't over. Not yet. The Navy realizes these guys are down, and they launch a rescue operation immediately.
Enter the PBM Martin Mariner. This is a massive flying boat, a seaplane designed for search and rescue. It takes off around 7:30 p.m. with a crew of the 13.
And this part of the story always blows my mind. The rescue plane,
Right.
It also disappears.
Less than 20 minutes after takeoff, it heads toward the last known position of Flight 19, and then just radio silence. No mayday. No distress signal. It just drops off the radar.
So in the span of about 5 hours, the Navy loses 14 men from the bombers, another 13 from the rescue plane. 27 men erased.
It was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And this second disappearance is what really ramped up the mystery. It felt like something was actively hunting them out there.
Now, I need you to play the skeptic for a second. The Martin Mariner didn't just fly into a wormhole, did it? The sources mention a nickname for this plane, that is. Well, it's concerning.
Yes, and it's a grim one. The crews called the Martin Mariner the flying gas tank.
That does not inspire confidence.
No. The PBM carried a massive amount of fuel, and the tanks were known to leak fumes inside the fuselage. It wasn't pressurized. If a crew member flipped a switch, or someone lit a cigarette, and people smoke on planes back then,
The whole thing could go up.
the whole thing could turn into a bomb. And there was a witness, right?
There was. A merchant ship in the area, the SS Gainesmills, reported seeing a massive fireball in the sky at the exact time and general location where the mariners vanished.
They even saw an oil slick afterwards.
Okay, so if we connect the dots, the rescue plane likely exploded. It wasn't the triangle getting them, it was a tragic flaw in the technology.
That is the most logical, evidence-based conclusion. But for the public, who didn't know about the fuel vapor issues, it just looked like another mysterious disappearance compounding the first one.
Which brings us to the aftermath. The Navy doesn't just shrug this off. They launch a massive search.
One of the largest in history up to that point.
Yeah.
We're talking about 300 planes and ships. They scoured 250,000 square miles of the Atlantic and the Gulf for 5 days.
And what did they find?
Absolute zero.
Nothing. No life rafts, no debris, not even an oil slick from the bombers.
Not a thing. It was as if 6 aircraft had simply evaporated. And this lack of debris is really what keeps the mystery alive. Usually when a plane crashes, stuff floats.
Seat cushions, oil, something.
Right. But here, the ocean was pristine.
That is unsettling. Even if you accept the rational explanations, the total lack of physical evidence is spooky.
It is. But we have to consider the environment. The Avenger is 10,000 pounds of metal. It sinks like a stone. And if they crashed in the Gulf Stream, that current is a river within the ocean. It moves at about 5.6 miles per hour.
So in 24 hours, any debris could be over 100 miles away.
Exactly. The ocean essentially hides the evidence, ruthlessly.
Now, let's talk about the official Navy report. Because initially, the Navy blamed Lieutenant Taylor. They cited mental aberration.
Which is military speak for he lost his mind.
But Taylor's mother wasn't having any of it.
No, she was a force of nature. She accused the Navy of blaming her son without a shred of evidence. She argued, since they don't have the planes, how can they prove the compasses didn't break?
And she lobbied Congress.
She did, and it worked. The Navy eventually changed the official cause of the incident to causes unknown.
Causes unknown. That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Because once the government says, we don't know, it opens the door for everyone else to say, well, I think I know. It was aliens.
Precisely. That ambiguity created a vacuum that folklore just rushed in to fill. And here's a fascinating detail from the sources. The term Bermuda Triangle didn't even exist when Flight 19 happened.
Wait, really? I assumed this was the event that named it.
Nope. The phrase Bermuda Triangle wasn't coined until 1964, almost 20 years later, in a Pulp magazine article. So Flight 19 was retroactively applied to the legend.
That is an aha moment. So people looked back at this 1945 event and said, see, this fits the pattern, even though the pattern was a concept invented in the 60s.
Correct. And when you look at the statistics, our sources point out over 1,000 people have vanished in that triangular area in the last century.
That sounds like a lot.
It is a lot, but you have to balance that against the reality of the location. This is one of the most heavily trafficked shipping and flight lanes in the world, and it's subject to violent, sudden tropical storms.
So the Coast Guard's official stance is basically, it's not magic, it's just math.
Exactly. If you have more cars on a highway, you're going to have more accidents. It's the same principle.
But still, 6 planes in one day. Let's look at the theories. On one side, we have the skeptic's narrative.
Which is a tragedy of errors. Taylor's compass breaks. He gets disoriented. He flies east into the Atlantic instead of west toward land. The weather turns bad. They run out of fuel and crash, and the Mariner explodes.
It's a clean, logical, tragic chain of events. But then on the other side, you have the enthusiasts, the people who look at that quote, the ocean looks wrong, and the compass failure, and they see something else.
The magnetic anomaly theory is the most persistent one. The idea that there's a localized distortion in the Earth's magnetic field in that area that scrambles compasses.
Which would explain why both of Taylor's compasses died at once.
It would. And then you get into the more exotic theories. Time portals, electronic fog, alien abduction. These theories try to explain the lack of debris. If the planes didn't crash, but were taken, that explains why we never found a screw or a bolt.
It's comforting in a weird way, isn't it? To think they didn't crash into the dark, cold water, but maybe went somewhere else?
It removes the finality of death. But we have to bring this back to the human cost. Because while we treat this as a ghost story, for the families of those 27 men, it was a lifelong open wound.
They never got bodies to bury, never got a funeral.
No closure, just a telegram saying missing. And to this day, there are amateur investigators and deep-sea divers combing the ocean floor off the coast of Florida. Every few years, someone claims to have found an Avenger.
But no confirmed match for Flight 19.
Not yet. There are a lot of wrecked planes from WWII training exercises down there. Identifying specific ones is incredibly difficult. It's the holy grail of underwater aviation archaeology.
So, when we look back at Flight 19, are we looking at a supernatural mystery or a lesson in how fragile our own systems are?
I think it's a lesson in humility. We rely so much on our technology, on our instruments. And when those fail, and when our own senses fail us, like Taylor thinking he was over the Keys, we are incredibly vulnerable.
It's a reminder that the ocean is still vast and dangerous and can keep its secrets.
It's that duality, isn't it? It's a story of bad navigation and bad weather. But the missing pieces, the weird radio calls, the vanishing rescue plane, they leave just enough room for the imagination to run wild.
And that's why the legend survives. Logic can explain 90% of it, but that last 10% is it's terrifying.
It is.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought. Just imagine sitting in that cockpit. You're an expert pilot, you've flown thousands of hours, and suddenly the sun is setting, your compass is spinning, and you look down. Taylor said, "Everything looks strange, even the ocean."
Was that just panic clouding his vision? Or in those final moments, did the world actually shift beneath them? Did they see something we just don't have the language to describe?
That is something to mull over the next time you look out at the horizon. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.